Okay, so good to be here. Hi, welcome. Good morning. My name is Kim Kambach, and I'm here today as your service leader. I use she, her pronouns, and if you're on Zoom, I have brown hair and I'm wearing a rust-colored sweater. One never knows. Yeah, oh yeah, and glasses that have flowers. And if you're visiting us today, please participate as you feel comfortable, and be sure you stay afterwards for coffee and treats. And our speaker today will be staying after with us for a few moments too if you have questions. Our congregation is committed to individual freedom of belief, welcomes diversity, seeks to promote a sense of community, and fosters religion, which enriches the spirit. We are mostly a lay-led community, strengthened and enriched by weaving together the volunteer contributions of members and friends. Our community is supported and guided by our minister, the Reverend Victoria Poling. As we begin our service today, please take a couple of breaths to become fully present. Sink into those sit bones, let your back rest into the chair, close your eyes gently if you're comfortable, and just breathe in and out. Let go of all it took to get here, and let yourself be in this moment, in this place, at this time. Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Swibatch Coast Salish Native people. The Puyallup people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land and beyond. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you belong here. I will be reading a portion from our Covenant of Right Relations, which honors our February theme of inclusion. We engage beyond our walls. Our love calls us to act for peace, social and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of the planet and its inhabitants. As individuals and as a fellowship, we engage in worthy local and global causes. We stay informed on issues of our time. Though each step may seem small, we persevere, our spirits renewed by involvement. By our actions, we hope to inspire others to join us in this work. And for those of you that were planning on attending the Orca mural, it was canceled for today because of the rain. The drones can't fly, but if you were on the email list, it's going to be rescheduled. So now for our chalice lighting, I'd like to invite Sylvia and Kirk to come forward.
Good morning. These words are from Reverend Dr. David Breeden. Welcome all to this place of love and justice. This place where we attempt to live up to humanity's highest ideals, highest hopes. Do we fail? Yes, we do, often. Do we try again? Yes, we do, always. Because we are people looking out for each other, all others, and the planet. Welcome all to this place of love and justice, to this gathering, where the sacred and the holy are our being together I love that part. Being together is what's sacred and holy here.
Thank you. In honor of how inclusion and welcoming takes us all, our opening readings is the Beatitudes for church leaders. Each one of you is a church leader. Blessed are those who arrive early and open church doors that they may be open for others. Blessed are the greeters who practice hospitality, that they may find welcome wherever they go. Blessed are those who nurture and guide children and youth, that they may in turn be nurtured and guided. Blessed are those who plan and lead worship, that they may deepen spiritually. Blessed are those who bring art and music to our church life, that they may live in harmony and beauty. Blessed are the AV specialists, that they may find meaningful connections. Blessed are those who manage finances and pay bills. They shall be called stewards of the church. Blessed are the coffee makers and food sharers, that they may be nourished. Blessed are elected leaders, that they may find and practice wisdom. Blessed are committee members, that their time and devotion may be rewarded. Blessed are those who lead small groups, that their kindness will be returned. Blessed are those who care for people in need, that their own needs will be met. Blessed are those who work toward justice, that fairness one day will flourish. Blessed are those who care for our building, that they should find good shelter. Blessed are those who come to services on Sunday and who contribute to the church in a myriad of other ways, that they may find fulfillment. Blessed are those who make sure the church is safe, and so that they may be secure all the days of their lives. So today our music is provided by us. And we're going to rise in spirit or in body and sing "We Are an Angry, Gentle People." It's been our hymn for this month, 170. So if someone would like to come up and start us on key, that would be good. Thank you, Mary, and thanks to all of you. The YouTube of Holly Near singing this at Harvey Milk's memorial on the steps of the San Francisco, I guess it was City Hall, is really moving. I mean, and you guys were right there. So today your service is provided by our board, and George is in Hawaii. He chose to be at a, one of those instead of being here with us. And Kate is at the Magic Flute Opera. So, things just sort of happen and come up in our lives. But the wonderful thing is we all can pick up together and do our work. So, on behalf of the board, thank you. So our speaker today is talking about finance, money, gifts, talents, and he's a friend of mine that I met through the Zen Center here on Island. Jude O'Reilly is a principal at the Dovetail Collaborative, a network of philanthropic professionals dedicated to increasing meaningful giving. He has more than 28 years of experience in technology, leadership, entrepreneurship in the private sector and in the world of social change. Jude was responsible for the Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship and funding within the community around the Skoll Foundation. During his tenure, he grew giving at the foundation from $30 to $180 million to causes as diverse as gender equity, global public health, and strengthening democracy. A seasoned organizational leader in social innovation, he has led technology teams at Amazon, Trustera, and Avantail. He was most recently the CEO of Volunteer Match, the world's largest network of volunteer talent. Jude earned a Bachelor of Arts degree with high honors in history from Swarthmore College and attended the University of Ghana. He lives with his wife and 2 children on Vashon Island. I'd like to welcome Jude.
Thank you for that extraordinarily kind and generous introduction. My name is Jude O'Reilly. For those on Zoom, I'm wearing a black jacket, which is a symbol of my insecurity and fear of public speaking. And I'm also wearing my favorite boots, and they're lucky, which is my wish that I could overcome the above. I'd like to start by thanking Kim and the Vashon Island UU board for inviting me to speak today. One of the benefits of being asked to speak, particularly about I think it's fair to say one's beliefs, is it's a chance to crystallize and think about those. And so for the last week, a bit stressfully, but for the last week I've had a chance to think about those and write some of them down. I want to warn you in advance that some of them are disagreeable, which is to say one could disagree about them. It'll be subtle. I'm from the Midwest, where we disagree. It sort of occurs to you later that somebody disagreed with you, but that may come up over the course of our talk, and I would welcome a dialogue about that during the coffee time or before, if the spirit moves you. Maybe we could begin by talking a bit about the word giving. Like it or not, the way we give often tells us more about ourselves than it tells us about our possibilities, our challenges, the opportunities that we have in the world. And I think addressing that challenge is precisely the opportunity we have in the United States. Nothing embodies that idea more than the word philanthropy, which, while I'm going to be focusing on philanthropy today largely about money, I've actually spent the majority of my life thinking about philanthropy in a much fuller sense, which is all the opportunities that we have to give and to give to others. I imagine a world where our collective giving tells us more about our needs, tells us more about our possibilities than about ourselves. I believe that world would be more just, it would be more peaceful, it would be more reasonable, and that is unfortunately not the America we are living in today. I would like today to bust open a little bit the Chamber of Secrets. Some of us are familiar with the Chamber of Secrets from Harry Potter. I am not. I will refer to an earlier chamber of secrets, which was the Talmudic tradition. In the early Jewish temples, there was a literal chamber where those in community in need would come secretly, often in the dead of night, and receive a bounty from the community. There was a simplicity and a beauty of that. There was the word comes to me, is that there was a holiness in that idea that one would come and receive what one would need without judgment, without shame, without feeling like a quote-unquote beneficiary. You just received what you and your family needed, and that giving was anonymous. So that there was no YouTube video about it, there was no TikTok, there was no name on a plaque somewhere in a hospital. There was a purity to it. I also want to acknowledge, though, that that has introduced in this Judeo-Christian culture an awkwardness about talking about philanthropy, talking about giving with purpose, that often makes it difficult to have conversations like this. It's remarkable to me because it's such a joyous thing, but it is awkward. It's awkward between couples. It's awkward within communities. If I can, I'd like to hold on to the humility of that original Chamber of Secrets, but embrace it with a new kind of inclusivity as the focus of the month, to try to tear down that awkwardness, even that fear, but hold on to some of that purpose and hold on to some of that original holiness. Looking at the big picture, while there have been modest changes, we give more today to dogs proportionally than we do to God. God is still winning in our individual philanthropy. So we as Americans give very much like our grandparents did to organized religion, to schools and education, largely our alma maters, to health and human services. So God, education, and health and human services is largely where our personal bounties go here in the United States, which is kind of remarkable if you think about it, because I won't say the world is different than it was 50 years ago, though I think it is. The information about how the world is different is certainly far richer, if you want to call it that, foreboding, significant than it was for our parents and grandparents. And yet our giving hasn't changed much. There has been a mixed shift. Animal welfare organizations have been one of the primary beneficiaries of our largesse over the last 50 years. And God receives less of that money. It used to be something like 50%. It's more like 24% today. But it's still pretty remarkable that our giving, our core patterns of giving, haven't actually changed that much. If you drill down on what that means, we put money in the now virtual collection plate. We support private schools or public school foundations. We support a local food bank. And those are all vital causes. Say what you will about organized religion. Organized religion provides about 40% of our social services in the United States. The Jewish Federation, Catholic Charities, the work of this community, and many others are a fundamental bulwark against the forces of poverty and despair for many humans. You've experienced this perhaps personally, or you've been a participant in those programs. If you have a child in public school, or you've been like me, the beneficiary of an incredible liberal arts education, you know that this system, in some ways, I'll get to a bit more of that in a second, that this system badly needs our help after generations of underfunding. If you step into a food bank, even in a wealthy community, or drive by one, in a wealthy community like Vashon or Silicon Valley, you will see and experience that despite incredible bounty, we still live with profound food insecurity. For 2 years, I worked Saturday mornings in a parking lot, putting food in trunks during COVID. It was a purely selfish act. I needed to be amongst other people in a safe environment, and that was a wonderful chance to do that. I had the best time in those parking lots. But this was, at the time, it was Silicon Valley. Like biggest houses, largest incomes. I learned what a wealth event was. There's such a thing. And yet, nearly a quarter of our population was food insecure, and I saw their cars go by often with Uber stickers or Amazon delivery stickers on them as they came through to receive their food. So these are real issues, and these are often effective interventions. The challenge of these organizations and of this system is that these are necessary but not sufficient to address the challenges of our time. When we read the papers, or as young people do today, doom scroll on their apps, you're likely reminded of the most pressing problems of our time, and I won't depress you by going through all of them, but I will say naturally we live in an ever-warming climate. We live with crushing global income inequality. We have deepening political polarization, not just here in the United States, but many places I have visited and experienced over the years. And those conflicts, and the conflicts that those things breed, as we of course hear about in Sudan, in Haiti, in Ukraine, and many other places. So how can we do better? I want to highlight 3 of them. The first is to give closer, to give farther away, and I'm going to suggest to you to kind of avoid the middle, if one must, and I'll get to more detail about that. The second is to think longer term, and the third is to give together. So before we get to that good news, though, I'd also like to suggest we begin by avoiding harm, because there's a reason why the Chamber of Secrets was secret. There is an opportunity for harm in our giving, and that's something that's worth reflecting upon. I'm going to call these the 3 gotchas, or the 3 bad O's. The first is an obsession with metrics. It's very sexy in philanthropy right now, and very human, especially for corporations, to ask for evidence of outcomes in activities. This seems like an intuitively modern and thoughtful idea. It would be if measurement was free and social science did not exist. It's also not the way most social change happens. Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I don't want to miss a word of what you have to say. And I'm wondering if you might speak a little more slowly.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Kind of a
Thank you for that. Thank you. So I grew up Quaker. We would call that eldering. I just received a little eldering, and message received. So thank you. I'll attempt to. I did warn you about the fear of public speaking. And from the top. So for those on the Zoom, we're just going to begin back with page 1. I was warned to keep this brief, so I'll do my best. Okay, so thank you, sister. I'm going to slow down a little bit then. Maybe I'll begin with a breath. Okay, we were talking a bit about an obsession with measurement and about the idea that we lived in a world where we hadn't had 300, 400, we want to go back to the Enlightenment, years of social science research. The impact of that attitude, which I have to say is reasonable. There's a wonderful quote which I'm currently forgetting. I'm sort of part of that problem. I grew up in that tradition. I've done that job plenty of times. It, however, creates a couple of unintended consequences. The first is it wastes a lot of money proving what social science has already proven. If you work in women and girls, I'll tell you there is a stack of research this tall that says for every $1 that you spend supporting women and girls, you will receive $5 in return. That's off the top of my head, but it's pretty close to that. It is well documented. So to ask a hardworking program, working in Ghana and Tamale to prove to them that your $100 is somehow educating a girl is useful only to a very, very small point. The second is it also reduces the work down to a measurable action. Imagine if we'd asked the great civil rights leaders of our time, like Dr. King, tell me, what did your speech really accomplish and why did we pay for your travel and entertainment? That's on its face, that is ridiculous. And yet, of course, that happens in philanthropy all of the time. There's an incredible degree of scrutiny that nonprofit leaders face. I have been in that role. And it's not simply financial scrutiny. It actually has a moral spin to it. Failure in the nonprofit space is viewed as kind of a moral failing, not simply a financial failing. Despite the fact that in my other life, working in tech entrepreneurship, you were lauded for your failures, like you were a battle-hardened veteran. Second opportunity, the second bad O, is overhead anxiety. This movement is largely over, but there may be some lasting impact of it even in this room. There was a substantial drive some years ago to focus on keeping nonprofit overhead down, as if building a sustainable organization was easier than building an e-commerce company, a construction firm, or a large law firm. These are all organizations that have overhead. That's advertising, human resources teams, employee benefits. We now know how much an organization spends on overhead isn't correlated with its impact in the world. However, givers can obsess about those numbers because they pop right out at you when you look at an organization's balance sheet. It does correlate, this focus on impact, with hollow, desperately underfunded nonprofit organizations. The third obsession, the third bad O, is over-diligencing. your $1,000 feels far more meaningful to you, perhaps, than someone else's $1,000. You worked for it, you gathered it, you sowed those seeds, you were part of that process. It is natural then to value those dollars, perhaps disproportionately, in the name of being good stewards, a word that I by and large love. But in the name of being good stewards, we often ask a lot of questions of those organizations who ask to receive those dollars, as if addressing our questions wasn't already a cost to the nonprofit. And that can be very subtle and very polite, but when you add it all together, it's extremely expensive. And they will bend over backwards to answer your questions, often, because, see above, they desperately need those dollars. So it creates this system where writing those custom reports and thinking through and putting a new cast on their financials creates additional, and I will use this word a little bit more maliciously, overhead for that organization that you then later get to pay for, because they have to do that with everybody else too. So it actually doubles down that inefficiencies. You could, instead of those questions, create incentives for transparency. We have thoughtful organizations out there like Candid and Charity Navigator and ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer that answer many of those questions for you for many organizations. If they do not, well, that's a reasonable question. Why not post that information on pick your favorite, Candid, and allow others to see it. We'll see it, and therefore other potential donors will as well. So I'm not saying there aren't reasonable questions, just think about ways to ask those questions that help support and create incentives for transparency. Think of your money as an investment in supporting transparency and doing that in advance. So you receive your best assessment of the change that was possible with your dollars. In exchange, they'll give you their candid analysis later on as to how those dollars were used. And they'll do that in a way that benefits everyone, not simply your organization and your needs. So if those are the gotchas, I'd like to conclude with a few great opportunities. You have a special gift. All of you, all of us in this room. Me a little less than lots of you, but and that is knowledge of your own community. So you drive around, experience, are part of social networks, educational systems in this community that far outweigh people that live on the mainland or thousands of miles away. You have skills of authentically evaluating success, trustworthiness, long-term and lasting value. You can see unmet needs far more clearly than an outsider in this community could. So that gives you a special advantage in your giving. You can use that opportunity to take some risks. That's the first opportunity. Opportunity number one, give very closely and very far away, but maybe avoid the middle. At the same time, there's huge financial rewards giving much farther away. Vashon's an expensive place. It's an expensive place to do lots of things. God bless grannies and their hard work supporting our healthcare system. And if you were to give money to, I'll pick one organization I'm aware of, Last Mile Health in Liberia, they could prove to you that every dollar that you spend on them delivers $10 of benefit to that healthcare system. That's an incredible return. It's one that I've personally experienced and seen very far afield in many ways, and I've got a very nuanced sense of that organization. But I'll tell you, there are thousands like them. So there's just this is another competitive advantage, that your US dollar goes a long way, very far away. And you can find those organizations as well. And if there is a scarcity, and I would try to avoid that mentality as much as you could, but it's hard not to when you see your balance at the end of the month. If there is a scarcity, maybe avoid that middle section. You know, I'm not sure that my alma mater, God bless them, and I hope they're not listening, need those dollars. But I'm quite sure Last Mile Health will use them effectively. I'm quite sure a local nonprofit is worth the risk. So that's the first opportunity. Give very closely and very far away, and maybe avoid the middle. Number two is think long term. If we live only as long as a typical mammalian species, that's 1 million years, for every person in this room, there will be 10,000 others in the future. That's the work of William McCaskill of Oxford University in his extraordinary book, What We Owe the Future. That's sort of a weird and compelling thought when I first heard it. It's like, that's amazing. For every person I know, there will be 10,000 others in the future. It's a slightly outrageous thought, given the challenges that we face today in the world right now, all the aforementioned global conflict and climate change and democracy. It kind of feels like we're at a fragile moment. However, we can forget that humans are extraordinarily resilient. The most horrific, or I should say one of the most horrific chapters of modern history to my mind was the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But do you know how long it took those populations to recover? It was 10 years. I'm not making a case for atrocity. I'm simply saying that human beings are extraordinarily tough. I would not, in the long range, bet against us. One of the best long-term philanthropic investments that humanity has ever made was made by a person I'd not heard of till I researched it, Laxmidas Gandhi, who paid approximately 13,000 rupees, which was a great deal of money in 1888, to send his brother Mohandas Gandhi to London for his legal education. He later went on to South Africa, which inspired his move into his leadership in the nonviolence movement, which changed the course of history both for India and South Africa and for the United States and many others. So I think thinking long-term about our giving is a really compelling opportunity. The third opportunity, and it's one you've already taken advantage of, is to give together. There is a widely accepted insanity in the world of charitable giving. That insanity is that each of us should be picking our own winners. If we'd done this with our retirement savings, if we'd gone out and individually picked stocks that seemed reasonable, or because you had a friend on the board, or you saw them on Facebook, or God help you, some other social media, many of us in the room will be retiring at the age of 95 and living on minimum wage. So that is that thinking, and I have to tell you, I am not one to pull full chapters from the for-profit world and apply it to nonprofits. That chapter, however, portfolio thinking, is a very powerful one. And it's not one that we apply to philanthropic giving very often. That very basic idea was the first thing I was taught by my first mentor coming out of college, which was don't pick stocks. Like, we have these things called mutual funds. Smart people develop them. Put your money there, and compound interest is real. That's the only reason why I will someday be able to retire. So a great way of building a portfolio is to build it generously and build it together, to organize our philanthropy in what are called giving circles or community-level funds or research-based funds. If you're interested, I've got examples of some of those nationwide and internationally that we can discuss over coffee, but I know that you're doing that within this very group. None of these approaches is a foolproof way of ensuring successful philanthropy, but they are far better than each of us toiling in obscurity. Kind of back to that awkwardness. I've met with what are so-called high net worth couples and talked to them about their giving, and sometimes it feels like it's the first conversation they've ever had. And they'll be clear about that. Like, it's just awkward. It brings up awkward stuff with our kids, and we differ, and that's all very reasonable and human. And that stuff stands in the way of us giving, I think, in more successful ways. I'll tell you candidly, in conclusion, something that might already, or surely is already obvious to you. I have worked with two world-class billionaires, and more casually with many others. I have advised them and others like them into how to spend their substantial fortunes to create the greatest possible social good. I am absolutely clear that they and others like them will not be coming for us. So they are not the solution to this problem. And I think very often when we think about those big concepts like climate and inequality, etc., we do leave it to the billionaire class to solve that problem for us, focusing instead on those things that are immediate and familiar. But I'll tell you, our giving, yours and mine and the others in this room who may have charitable assets under $10 million, all of us are 70% of giving. So we are $1 billion a day. Actually, we are more than $1 billion a day here just in the United States, each and every day, including Sunday, all year round. So that dwarfs the work of the Fords and the MacArthurs and the Gateses of the world, even if much of our public focus goes upon those organizations. If we are able to move beyond the close and the comfortable, if we are able to move beyond the giving that tells us more about ourselves than it tells us about the problems of the world, if we are able to give together courageously, thoughtfully, and meaningfully, we could create what Robert Reich has called risk capital for a democratic society. In so doing, we could address the most pressing problems of our time and create a better future for all people, not just here on this island, but across the world. Thank you.
Wow. Let's hold a moment of contemplation and worship. An old English word that means to consider things of worth in a generous and abundant silence. Thank you, Jude. Thank you to each of you for having open ears and open eyes and open hearts. So our response will be read by Ann Lewis, and so she's going to come on up now.
Thank you. We've come together with our deepest concerns, speaking and singing words of inspiration and hope. We have committed ourselves to do what we can to ease the burdens of those who suffer, to stand for decency and compassion. We've pledged to work for a more wholesome environment for us and for all the generations that will follow. But these are just words. The hymns we sing are just songs. All our reflections are just idle thoughts. When we convert them into loving and responsible action throughout the week, then and only then will this morning become what we want it to be, a time of worship.
So Jessica is going to come forward now to do our joys and concerns. Thanks, Jessica.
We're going to pause the recording. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
Thank you. As members and friends of the Vashon Island Unitarian Universalists, we commit to supporting our congregation. Your pledges and offerings are very much appreciated. Our congregation engages beyond our walls for peace, social justice, economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and its inhabitants. We engage financially by offering our time and talents. Once a month, we contribute to the financial offering in a regional, national, or international organization that aligns with our values. This week, our offering will go to our beloved community. So as the baskets get passed around, let's sing We Give Thanks. It's number 402.
We
Sylvia and Kirk will come extinguish our chalice.
So, we extinguish our chalices with these words by John C. Morgan, titled, "In the End, It Won't Matter." In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love.
I'd like to thank each of you for coming. I'd like to thank Runa, who's on tech today, the UU board, Jessica, Kirk, myself, Sylvia and Ann, and the setup team today. And I'd like to thank Jude for coming and sharing today and participating with us. And I want you to know that as a person who was doing this service script, I sometimes was nervous that no one would come. So,